Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Doc of Detox show. I'm Dr. Darrell Wolfe, and today's show is The Economics of Hope with the Honourable Dr. Paul Hellyer. Paul is a Canadian engineer, politician, writer, and a commentator. He is the longest serving current member of the Privy Council of Canada. Paul is here today to talk about his most recent book, Liberation. Boy, I'd love to get some of that, wouldn't you? Okay, so the book is called Liberation, the Economics of Hope. So let's begin the show. Good day, Paul, and thanks for joining me, my friend.
It's my pleasure.
So how's things in, you're in Ontario, correct?
Correct, yes, Toronto.
Toronto, how do you like it there?
I love it.
Yeah? Why do you love Toronto?
I live it right on the bay, and I have just a view that looks like a television screen all year round, and there's always something happening. And I'm a very blessed person to have such a beautiful spot.
Well, there you go. You were born with an imagination, and you used it, and you decided you knew what you wanted, right?
Well, I tried to use my resources well, and I lucked in this one. I bought the condo during the recession of 81 and got it for cost.
Wow.
So you couldn't do that even a couple of years later.
Oh, well, there you go. And your book is called Liberation, the Economics of Hope. And I guess you used some of that economics of hope when you bought the house, eh?
I sure did. I had a little cash, and I wouldn't even say how much I paid for it because it seemed like such a small amount.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get in trouble for it. There you go.
Oh.
So, talking about your book, do you mind telling us Liberation, the Economics of Hope? Why did you write it? Okay. And what is the message behind it?
Well, I wrote it because as soon as I realized that the pandemic was real and that this was going to be unlike anything that I had seen for a long time, and that it would inevitably produce a breakdown in the financial system, create probably a recession at the end, which is worse than anything since the Great Depression, and that this is the time to do something about it. After trying for decades to get people to listen to the fact that there's a better way of doing things, and I started on this 70 years ago because I'm a child of the Depression, and I saw poverty at its rawest way, and said, this must never happen again. So I went into politics to try and do something about the banking system, and I've been working at it ever since. And I guess this is my last hurrah, but I thought this is going to be a bad one. Something dramatic is going to have to be done. And if we're ever going to change this system, which must be changed, because as the Prince Charles said at Davos, if we don't change the economic system, the planet will burn. And I take that almost literally. And so we've got to do something about it now, or it's going to be a total disaster for millions and maybe billions of people. So that's the reason I wrote it. That's the reason I'm promoting it, and that's the reason I want people to look at it and see what I think is the way out.
All right. So you said that getting people to listen. Are you actually talking about people? Are you talking about politicians? Or are you talking about bankers?
Well, bankers, I think, have deaf ears.
Okay.
Most politicians have deaf ears. A lot of people will listen, although when you start talking about money and banking, that's a good way to get their eyes to glaze over. I start this book, though, in a different way than I have any other. Instead of an introduction, I have 21 pages of what I call disclosure. And what I say is, at my age, I have a lot of knowledge about what's going on in the world and in the universe and the cosmos that most people don't have. So I want to share a little bit of it in this book. So I started out that way and mentioned 5 different plagues that are being used to entrap the human species. And the 5th one is the economic system. So most of the book is about that, but there are a lot of other things in there too that are relevant. And if you read the whole book, you sort of slowly but surely come to a new reality of what the situation is and how really perilous it is, and how essential it is to do something now, or forever wish that you had done something now.
Absolutely. And you know what? Your book is amazing, but I want to ask you who and what is entrapping us, and why would they want to entrap us? Is it a power play? You know, some people love the power of love, and some people just love power. Is that all it's about? Nothing else?
Oh no, that's the root thing. That's the root, however. Um, the monetary situation and the banking system is probably the most urgent of the 5 plagues, but the most, I think, intractable one is what I call the Fourth Reich. And
what did you say? The Fourth Reich?
The Fourth Reich, yes.
Okay, all right. Can you explain
What
that?
happened? What happened after the World War II was that the United States armed forces wanted some help from the Nazis to take the Russians on for size and to fight the Cold War. So they enlisted a whole bunch of scientists of various stripes. And even though President Truman, he okayed the idea, but said you mustn't get anybody that was active in the Nazi Party. But of course, they didn't pay any attention to him. And they brought these people into the United States under what they called Operation Paperclip.
Right.
And they brought in literally thousands of Nazis, some of them very dedicated. And they gave them new names, new CVs, and then gave them important jobs, both in the civil and military aspects of the United States of America. So much so that when, after the war, the Americans found out that the Nazis had been thinking ahead and that they had built a base in Antarctica, which was a threat to the United States, that they had to do something about it. And the Secretary of Defense sent a flotilla to Antarctica. I think there were 7 ships, can't remember exactly, 1 carrier, a number of airplanes, and I think it was 5,000 Marines. And they were going to take out the base and get rid of it. And what happened when they got there was that a couple of flying saucers came up out of the ocean, sank one of their ships, killed some of their men, and drove them away.
Wait a minute. Flying saucers came out. So were the flying saucers... Who was manning them? Does any...
I don't know. In my book, I say it could have been either the Germans or the reptilians, which are, as you know, one of the races that think they own the planet and have their eyes on it. And it could have been either one because they had been working together for some time and were, in effect, allies of a sort. So when Admiral Byrd, who was in charge, got back to the United States, he was livid, as you can well imagine, and wanted to nuke them. But by then, the paperclip Nazis had such power within the echelons of the United States that nothing was ever done about it. And they gave him a promotion and a welcome home, and that's all it amounted to. Well, they have been working assiduously ever since. And after the first crash of, it wasn't the first crash, but the first one that really got the thing going about unidentified flying objects at Roswell in 1947. That's sort of when they started on a new tack, and one of the vehicles wasn't too badly damaged, so they brought that to the United States, and then the United States forces, I guess particularly the Navy, took the operation to the western United States, Nevada and Arizona in particular, where it wouldn't be under the eye of either the Congress or the press, and started back engineering it. And that's when the first lying began, was when they reported that crash in July 1947. The base commander put out a press release. His promo guy put out a press release saying that a saucer had been retrieved, and his boss put one out later in the day saying that no, that wasn't true, that it was a Rowan balloon, something that was used for testing the atmosphere and the temperature and so on at high altitudes. And that was the foundational lie in this whole subject, which has continued ever since, right down to the present time, when they're just starting to leak a little bit in the last couple of years, very slowly.
Why are they leaking? Why are they leaking, though? Why did they decide to leak now?
Well, if you had, during the last 70 years, built a space fleet, how could you explain it?
Oh, there you go. Right.
If you didn't start saying, well, there are these things called flying saucers, and actually we started building them decades ago, and built a big fleet, and it's been operating for decades now. You have to, at some point, it has to come out, and so if you haven't told the truth for 70 years, the time has come to maybe start leveling with the people and the taxpayers, because as I guess it was the late Senator Ennui from Hawaii said, these people have been operating independently. It was a shadow government. It had its own Air Force, its own Army, its own Navy, its own source of funds, and it operated outside of the law and outside of the Constitution. And so, in effect, it became the de facto government of the United States. And this is what President Clinton said when he was asked about why he didn't say more about this subject. I think it was Ms. McClendon in the press gallery. And she asked him why he hadn't leveled in this area. He said, Sarah, there is a government within the government, and I don't control it. And frankly, that blew my lid, because imagine the President of the United States who has his finger on the atomic button, and he doesn't know what the troops under his command are actually doing.
Holy smokes. So can I backtrack just a second and tell me if I'm getting off topic here, Paul?
Yeah.
But I actually listened to a manuscript of a lady that was able to actually communicate and communicate with what they said, that they found. They actually got one of these aliens that weren't dead from their crash ship, and and she actually was able to actually translate or communicate on some level. And I actually listened to this manuscript. It was about 4 hours long, and this was a couple years ago. Do you know anything about that?
I have a copy in my files.
Okay, what do you think about that?
And it's a top secret. Well, I think it's the truth.
So do I. Well, you know what? I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. But the reality is that you know, some things you just can't make up, and it just with all the other puzzles and the pieces. You know, there's always been so many puzzles and so many pieces, and everybody knows that the weather balloon story was just so flaky, right? So the
Right.
reality is, I'm not saying I know, but the reality is when I listened to this, it was the most logical thing, even though it wasn't logical for my brain. I
Right.
actually went back and listened to it about a half a dozen times because my mind wanted to say no, Paul. Just like how you
Right.
said, how do we reach the people that were going into an economic crisis? How do you reach them? Because their mind just puts up a wall, right? Well, my mind put up a wall when I listened to this and went through this.
You have to start with in small amounts. And there was a chap, as you probably know, from Israel, who had been their top person in this area, who came out publicly 3 or 4 days ago. And it was all over well, it would be more than 3 or 4 days ago, I guess. But he he was he went further publicly than I have, and he said he didn't think the people were ready for it. And I say the people are ready for it, but you have to start with a pablum for a baby and keep changing the diet as you mature.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to start at the beginning and
Spoon
feed
feed.
it out.
Spoon feed.
That's exactly until you get to a higher level, and probably after a year's hearing by a bipartisan committee in the Congress, you would have people who would understand. I would say 90% of the people would understand 90% of what was going on, but it would take them a year, and only if the mainline press reported what was going on.
But they're not going to do that, Paul. Mainline
Well,
press.
unless somebody hits them over the head
Right. Okay.
real
So
hard.
I got a question to ask you, and I think you'll think that it's a logical one, but you know, maybe right now people can accept that, but actually, just even 10 years ago, you'd be called a crackpot.
Well, you've just said it. That's what people said. Even my family.
Yeah, and well, they're not going to be saying it because it will come out, and there's a lot of things, Paul. Like I've never ever, even touched on this before on my show, and the reality is guess what? My audience they'll be just like, okay, he's just gone too far. So the reality is that we know the majority of the population isn't open-minded. They don't have an imagination anymore. But you know what? The day you get your imagination back, you can understand that imagination is everything, and something had to be created, something had to be done. If you put the dots together and it doesn't add up, then it's got to be something that you or your brain is not accepting that you need to accept. How's that?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to say to them, do you enjoy science fiction?
Yeah.
Well, it's not fiction.
Every science fiction movie that has ever come on TV has become real. Star Trek was the biggest one with the flip phone. I always thought to myself, someday I would love to have a flip phone. And then, you know what? I actually found a flip phone that was a plug-in in the wall in Florida, and it was overpriced like crazy, Paul, but I had to buy it. But meanwhile, you know what? Everything that we see in science fiction is happening. And I think, you know what somebody said to me, Paul? And this gentleman is a brilliant scientist. He said, and this was like 30 years ago. He said to me, Darrell, the rule in the universe is you have to let people know what you're going to do to them, and then you're allowed to do anything you want if they're going to allow you to do it. What do you think of that, Paul?
Well, I think it's probably true.
Right.
As long as you say it over and over again. I guess it was Hitler who said, if you tell a lie that's big enough, often enough, people will believe it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And if you can even just look at what's going on. I want to go on. I've got a whole bunch of questions here, but I want to ask you something. And this is what I tell my audience all the time. In a human world, why is it so difficult to to get the poisons out of the air, out of the food, out of the water. I mean, it's intentionally poisoned. I mean, you can go to the dentist and get silver fillings that are half mercury. Okay, they're half mercury, which means that those silver fillings are not silver; they're poisoning you. And how is it that so much corruption can get into every system, every association, and nobody can do anything about it? And then this is what brings me back to what you just said. That, you know what I say to people? I said, look at whatever's doing it, and I said this 20 years ago, and I really did, Paul. I said, it isn't human. I don't know what it is, but it's something that's not human, because human beings don't go around. I mean, you might want to rip somebody off for some money and stuff, but just blatantly murdering millions of people, stealing their money continually. The government steals our money continually, Paul.
Yeah, they rob us. That's what they do. But the bottom line
is
that there is a spiritual fight going on in the cosmos, and that the Creator God is being challenged by an errant son, and his workers and disciples, and they create evil on an unbelievable scale, way beyond the imagination.
Why, Paul? Why?
Why? Well, it's power and greed.
I mean, on all levels, on all universal levels. So it's not just on the planet, damn it. It's on all universal levels.
Well, I wouldn't say all, but more than one, probably.
All right.
Because this fight has been going on for a long while, and it has. And I hope I don't push anybody's imagination too far by saying other planets have been involved in the same kind of battle.
Well, I think that, Paul, it would be really small-minded if you thought you were the only species in the universe that God created, when the universe is expanding at every moment. And that's what you would call a contracted mind. Okay, so we'll leave that one alone.
Right, except for a long while, we used to think we were the center of the universe.
Yeah, right. I never ever did that. I never did. I'm not that narrow-minded, that closed down. And we were programmed to believe we were the center of the universe, just like we were programmed to believe all of these fairy tale stories from Santa onward. You've written a lot of books, though, so it's not like this is your first book, right? How many books have you written?
I have written 16 books.
Okay.
And I have written 4 that I've said each one is my last book.
Oh, really?
They started 10 years ago. And I thought that was my Magnus Opum or whatever it is, all I knew.
Yeah.
4 years later, I had learned so much about what was going on in the United States and the world and the galaxy that I wrote a book called The Money Mafia, A World in Crisis, and it's still a classic. And so I thought that was my last. Well, then I got more information about the origin of the cosmos. So I wrote a book, and I didn't have enough new material for that, so I tacked it on to the end of my autobiography, and that was called Hope Restored, an autobiography a couple of years ago. Well, then this is the last one that doesn't have a lot of new material in it, except in the final chapter, or a couple of chapters maybe. But it's got some interesting things in it that people should know. And if they would read the front 21 pages and then jump over some of the economic history and read the latter part of the book, they would get a very good idea of some of the skullduggery that you've been talking about, and what we have to do about it. Because I've never written a book which outlining the problems that exist without suggesting a solution to it. Never. And I really resent people writing books and then leaving you hanging at the end, saying, well, it's terrible, but they don't say that there's any cure. There there's a way out. You have to find what it is and then to do something about it. And in this case, as individuals.
Now, if I can just say this on just a little statement to everyone, okay? Let me ask you a question. Is there been a time in your life, if you could look back and you said, I will never believe in that, I will never eat that, I will never do that, and you're doing it? Understand something. The reason why we are in such a mess right now is because you do not realize as a human being that 90% of your brain is your subconscious. And that subconscious only runs on its prominent, dominant beliefs. So it depends on who ruled and schooled or even fooled you that got you to eat, think, drink, and do what you're doing. And understand something. Are you your authentic self? And do you have the imagination to embrace the future? So I just wanted to say that, Paul, because there's going to be people on here that are just going to be shaking their heads and going, well, you know what, I was okay until he went and said this or that or this or that. And understand something. That's because you've got a mental block, and it's called a cement block. And it says, hey, this idea that Paul just brought on the air is way too expansive for your beliefs. So understand something. We are either going to be smart because our beliefs are smart. We're going to be we're going to be dumb because we have dumb beliefs. We're going to be open-minded if those beliefs allow it. And if we don't, we're not going to be. What do you think, Paul?
I think people have to think about what I call the broader reality.
Okay.
I've spent 15 years researching the broader reality. And the reason I wrote this book was I thought at my age, I had to leave some record of it so that people who want to know what's going on, who want to spend a few minutes reading, a few minutes thinking, and to get a better idea of where we Earthlings fit into the situation and what our future holds, if any. And it doesn't hold much if we keep on building weapons of mass destruction, including viruses, and have them say to themselves, there's a lot going on that we don't know about. And as you just said, what we're eating, that we should be doing to the planet to save the planet. And we better find out, excuse my language, damn quick. Because if we don't, this planet is not going to be habitable. And if we don't, these people who have been running this from the sidelines have plans to what they call depopulate. And that's something we have to talk about, whether we want to or not, because they have figured out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ways of depopulation in order to get their hands on the planet and to build a government which is not elected, unelected, unresponsible, and in effect is rule of, by, and for the elite. And it's going to be a fascist government. And the way things are going, it's going to be the Fourth Reich government. But we can still do something about it if we are interested enough in protecting the lives of our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, which is the reason I speak out as I do.
Thank you, Paul. And you know what? I want to just say this right now. I want to thank you for your courage for doing this, because you know what? You know, it's hard to stand up for yourself and stand up for the things you believe unless the herd has approved it, or if it's government stamped, or, you know, and that's the problem. That's why we're in a problem right now, because everybody is just staying part of the herd, but we all know where the herd goes, off to the butchers eventually. Paul, do you mind me asking you a personal question? How old are you?
97.
97 years old. Wow. Well, I hope to be 97 years old and as brave as you. And I'm not just saying that, because understand something. If there's enough brave people that will actually stand up. And, you know, listen, everybody, if you don't, you know what? Nobody ever really buys into everything I say. And I get that. You know, people will say to me, Darrell, you know what? Okay, I agree with most, or I agree with some, and that's okay. But the reality is just make sure that you don't create and define a jail for yourself when it comes to, your mind, and because then it just becomes a landmine. Paul,
Yeah,
you give the impression that the banking and the financial system is totally rotten. Is
absolutely rotten.
You believe that, eh? It is.
Yeah.
Well, how do you fix some? You know what? If I had a totally rotten fruit, I can't bring it back to life, Paul. So how do I take something rotten, okay? And when you say rotten, that is a disease. How do you get something like that? You can't make it well. So
Well, that's the reason you have to get a copy of the book and read it.
there you go. And there it is right there.
It's
So
there.
are you saying that the American people lost control of their government and armed forces decades ago? And because United States is the strongest country in the world, and you believe, and you say, and you in your book, that they have lost control of their government and the armed forces decades ago, even though they don't even know it.
Right. And
Okay.
they've got to get it back.
How are they going to get it back? Is that in the book too?
Sure.
Beautiful. All right. Well, maybe we better send a copy to Donald Trump, don't you think?
I think a few copies circulated in government, and
How's that working?
well, we'll have to figure out a way, see if these people can afford to buy a book.
There you go. Yeah, they might be able to afford it, but they probably say we can't afford it politically. There you go.
What they'll say is we can't afford the time to read it.
Uh,
And when, and this is who was it? Alan Dulles, who brought in all of the Nazis to the CIA to make it a totally Nazi organization, which has to be wiped right off the face of the map. How did he get them in, he said? Because Americans don't read books. And I would say neither do Canadians. And that's the reason that they have this perhaps revulsion, as you might call it, to listening to things that they don't like to hear or haven't heard before or unaware of.
are you going to make your book into an audio? Because I know a lot of people that travel in cars and subways and planes, trains, automobiles, right?
I hope it will be. The one that I told you that was the classic, the Money Mafia, is an audio. So
Beautiful.
that's available.
Excellent. So, will a change of government truly save the day? And how? Okay, Paul. Seriously, I know you don't want to answer it, but how do you change a whole government? We're talking about decades of corruption. I mean, understand. The people in Canada, the people in the United States, and all other countries, they've never ever got what they deserved. We keep on having to pay more. I'm going to ask you a question, okay? And you might not be able to answer this, but somebody told me the other day, so I don't want to start a rumor, but they said that our income tax, 60% of it goes to the Vatican, 40% of it goes to the Queen of England.
No, that's not true. That's just been a rumor, and it's not true.
Good.
But what you can say is that the United States sold its right to its money creating powers more than 100 years ago.
To who?
Consequently, you've been borrowing money and paying interest on it that you didn't need to.
Right.
Trillions and trillions of dollars of interest.
Right.
Enough to give a decent living to every American, and enough left over for helping the poor around the world. And it's simply because a handful of people have become multi-trillionaires because they create money out of thin air, and then we have to borrow it and pay interest on it.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that the new president and Congress will take back control of America, or do you think that the whole thing is one evil plot layered under another evil plot? And what do you think?
Well, if you're an odds taker, no president since Eisenhower has been able to do it. So it isn't going to happen automatically. But what I'm calling for is some congressional committees to look for the truth and get the truth out in these areas. And by defunding, for example, those parts of the United States forces that would be a threat to the American people, and doing other things that are bold and brave but essential,
Right.
they can do something. But it
Right.
has, the whole Congress has got to do it. It's not gonna be done by the White House, which is incapable of covering all of these areas. But the Congress has got to get the truth out, and some of the, I list the areas, and we'll give the list of the ones that are most important. And then they and the people should understand what has to be done, and it will then be up to them whether they do anything about it or not.
Okay, so let's just say they do. So we've got a long haul back, but let's say they don't. What does that look like? I mean, I know you can't go into this whole thing, and you don't have a crystal ball on this, but what does that look like for the human race? I mean, are we talking about total enslavement?
Let me just use one word: disaster.
Okay, all right, all right. In the opening disclosure section of your book, you mentioned 5 plagues that the cabal has subjected us to, and we've only discussed 2 of them. What are the others?
Well, the others are electromagnetic fields.
Okay, I know that one well.
And let's see, the geoengineering,
Okay,
chemtrails,
right.
global climate. We've got most of them there for.
Yeah, you do. So, are these people that are, like you said, it's just a handful of them? Are they just? Have they had enough of us? Are we just a game? Is this just a game, or is this just downright evil, just becoming of age?
I would say that's the latter is correct. That's the situation.
All right. Okay. Can you tell me about geoengineering? I don't think a lot of people understand that subject too much.
Why don't we do another program in the new year sometime?
Okay.
And go into these other areas that we haven't got time to talk about today.
All right. So, let's do that. So, let's look at doing that in about, if it's okay with you, maybe in about 4 weeks, because I don't really like to have a big gap because people really do and they really are interested in this, and we'll give this 4 weeks to circulate. But how about 4 weeks? Does that feel good?
That sounds good to me.
All right. So we'll do it. 4 weeks from this date. All right. Paul, can you please tell everybody about your book? And tell everybody where they can get your book, okay? Would you please?
Well, there are actually 4. The last 4 books are all important. I would say the last 3 in particular, starting with the Money Mafia, and then Hope Restored, and then the present one, the Liberation. Those 3, and they're available at your favorite book place. They're available, of course, from Amazon, and they're available from my website if anybody wants an autograph copy. And my website is paulhellyer.com. That's PAULHELLYER, web, W-E-B, all one word, .com. And I have all 4 of those books for sale, and you can get an autograph copy.
All right. Now, Paul, if somebody else, because there's a lot of people that watch my show around the world, if somebody else would like to interview you, would you be open to that?
Well, probably in the new year.
Yeah, well, in the new year. Well, it's January the 13th right now, so sometime in the next few weeks, that'd be good?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I'm going to take a couple of weeks off to catch up on some housekeeping, like throwing out all old files.
Yeah, though. You know what? That's what I'm working on too. And even a couple of my colleagues, it seems like we're all doing the same thing. It's called cleaning house on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. And I think it's going on all around the world. What do you think, Paul?
I hope so.
Yes. God bless you, my friend. And we'll see you we'll see Paul back here in 4 weeks. Please share this video, share the information, let people know about this book. It's not just another book. All right. Okay, so give it a read and find out if you can actually expand that mind of yours. Okay, because I'll tell you, something's got to happen here. You know what? The only way that we should be growing is consciously. Okay, and so do you want to grow consciously? Because that's the only way that we're going to help this planet. It's the only way that we're going to help our children's children's children. And understand something. I said this many times in the last few months. There is a war going on. And I said it's a spirit war. It's a spiritual war. It has to be. It can't be anything else. And the reality is guess what? You can conform to the norm, okay? Or you can rise up and find your brave heart roar, okay? And look for your authentic self. And that authentic self was created by God Almighty, so we should start acting like it. I want to thank Paul again for joining me today, okay? And I want to thank you, my listeners. And please, just try to keep your mind open. Stay connected to your breath. Breathe deep. Let the information in. Don't throw it in the garbage. Don't even just put it on the shelf. Remember what I said before? There's things that you're doing today that you said you would never do, and you're doing them. You know what? You have unlimited potential. The day that you understand that when your beliefs change, you change. When your personality changes, you change your reality. And we do it one baby step at a time. If you were to change 1% today, and you did that for 100 days, you just did 100%. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining me. And don't forget, every Monday, I do a live Q&A where you can come on and send your questions in on Facebook. Okay? You can do it on Intercom, and you can do it on YouTube. And it's 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Or you can put your questions right underneath here. And, you know, if there's any questions you want to put under here for Honourable Paul Hellyer, please do it now. We'll hang on to them. And when he comes back in 4 weeks, we'll ask him these questions, okay? Because remember something, the day that your questions matter, you matter, okay? That's the only time you're going to see change. And also, those of you, it's the new year, who are interested in having a personal treatment and training, having one of our master trainers come and train you in Wolfe Non-Surgical or how to live the perfect day from the minute you wake up until you go to bed, go see my personal treatment and training guide in my library. Just go click on my library at docofdetox.com. And for those of you who want to start the new year in a better way, get a consultation that we give you a money-back guarantee that we will change your life on all levels. All right? And our upcoming courses in 2021, okay, are going to be March. We have a course here in March. And guess what? We're in Mexico in April. And so if you want to join us down there for our full combined course, okay, 21 days. So March here in 21 days, April in Mexico, and then back here again in May for another one, 21 days, okay? Don't forget, everyone, every Monday, I do a live Q&A like I just said. And when you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe below and make sure that you click on the bell to enable notifications that you never miss a show, all right? And just know this, all of our shows are time-stamped, so 24 hours later, they go up on YouTube, so you can find the topic that Paul was talking about today and be able to go there. So we do that as well. Also, if you wish to listen to the audio version of any of our shows, you can find them on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. And again, I want to thank the Honourable Paul Hellyer for coming on my show. Bless him. Let me tell you something. Somebody that lives that long's got something going on. I'll tell you that much. God bless everyone. And understand something. 3, 2, 1. Take your power back. Question authority. Okay? Become the authority. God bless. And take care. I'm Dr. Darrell Wolfe. If you're looking for life-saving and life-changing information, well, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to click and subscribe. Stay connected.